everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this super cute and easy rose shoulder bag using the cross stitch method. So let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so for this project, this is the yarn I'm going to be using. So I've got cream, a bright red, a deep red, and then a green colour. And I'm going to be using the cream for my main colour. This is definitely a little bit more of a chunky double knit. It's probably more of an Aran. And the reason I'm using this is because I want the main part of the bag to be nice and strong and dense. And I'm going to be sizing down a hook so that all of the stitches are like nice and neat and tight. However, if you're using kind of a double knit yarn, then you might need to size down a hook a little bit more than I am, or if your tension is pretty normal, because mine's loose, then you might just want to use like a normal size hook for this weight yarn, so probably about a 4mm hook, maybe even a 5. But I've got about 100 grams of this. I've got a little bit less than 100 grams right now because I've already done one panel, but you probably need about 100 grams for the main panels. And then for this deep red, again, I've probably got about 50 to 100 grams of this red colour, and this is also double knit. And then I've just got a little bit of these scrap pieces of this deep red and this kind of khaki earth toned green, and this is what I'm going to be using for the shadow on the rose, and then obviously the stem. So that's all the yarn you need. And then, like I said, for my hook I am sizing down a little bit because I want my stitches to be nice and dense, because I do have a loose tension. If you have a normal tension, I would suggest maybe going for like a 4mm hook. But yeah, I'm using a 3mm hook for this project, and I'm going to be using this for all of the yarn that I've got. And then you're also going to need a sewing needle, depending on whether you're going to do the cross stitch method or you're going to just do the regular tapestry crochet, but you'll still need a sewing needle because we are going to be sewing the end section. So for the first part I'm going to be showing you how to make this panel. As you can see, I've already done one, and I'm just going to kind of explain the graph section a little bit. So because I'm doing cross stitch crochet, I'm crocheting all of my rows vertically, if that makes sense. So I've chained up the height of the graph, and then I've crocheted rows going towards the width. So I've got 34 stitches in the height, and I've done 40 rows in total. So I've basically just chained up 34, and then I've done 40 rows of single crochet. So I'm just going to show you kind of a quick recap of how to do that now, but it's nice and simple because it's just a flat panel. So I'm taking my cream yarn and I'm making a slip knot like this, and I'm just going to make a chain of 34. So just a recap of how to do your chain: you just want to basically take your yarn and wrap it anti-clockwise around your hook like this, and then pull down into that loop to make your first chain. So that's one chain, that's two, that's three, that's 4, and I'm just going to continue that until I have 34, and then I'm going to do an extra one at the end for the turning chain, so that's 35 in total. Okay, so I've done 34, now I'm just going to do my extra one for the turning chain. And now we're going to start our first row. So as you can see with these chains, you have got these kind of V's going all the way down, and when you flip it over to the back you will have these bumps that are like horizontal. As you can see, when I turn it this way you can see them a lot clearer. So I'm basically just going to be doing my single crochets into these bumps behind the chain, because this gives a much neater effect, and it also enables you to crochet into an actual stitch later on versus a chain. I just prefer the look of it, but if you really don't want to do it, you can just go straight into your second chain from the hook. But I'm going to flip my chain over, and I'm going to count the second chain, or the second back bump. So that's 1, 2, and I'm going to insert my hook into that horizontal bump behind the chain like this. And I'm going to be doing single crochets for the entirety of this panel. So I'm just going to yarn over, again anti-clockwise. I'm going to pull through that bump like that. So that's now 2 loops on the hook, and I'm going to yarn over anti-clockwise again, and now pull through those last 2 loops. And that is your single crochet. So it's nice and simple. So I'll do it one more time into the next back bump, insert my hook, yarn over anti-clockwise, pull through that back bump, yarn over anti-clockwise again, and pull through those last 2 loops. So now I'm just going to continue that all the way to the end until I get to the very last back bump, and then I will show you row 2. You should have 34 stitches in your row. So I've just reached the very last stitch and I've done my single crochet. So now I'm going to start my next row, and I'm just going to chain 1 to start the next row. So I'm going to yarn over anti-clockwise and just pull through that kind of loop to create that chain, and then we turn the work like this. So this row is now going to repeat for the entirety of the rest of the panel. So from row 2 to row 40 you're doing the exact same thing. So you chain 1 and turn your work, and then you insert your hook into your first stitch, which is right here, and do your single crochet as normal, like that. Into the next stitch, repeat the same thing, insert your hook, make your single crochet as normal, into the next stitch, insert your hook, make your single crochet as normal. And you want to repeat that all the way to the end, so that you now have 34 stitches again in your row. And then once you get to the end of the row, you want to start row 3, so you just chain 1 and turn the work, repeat the exact same thing all over again, 1 single crochet into each stitch. So it's nice and simple, and I'm going to be repeating this until I've done 40 rows in total. So the one we done at the beginning counted as the first row. This one we are just doing now is the second row. So you're going to want to complete 40 rows in total, and then I will come back and I will show you the next step. Okay, so I've just finished my 40 rows of single crochet, and once you have finished, you just then want to chain 1 and fasten off. So you just want to make a chain, yarn over and pull through, and then just cut the yarn. So now that's all complete, you then want to make your second panel, which I have already done, exact same size, exact same steps, and then I'm going to show you the cross stitch section. Okay, so I'm now going to be doing the cross stitch section. I've just got some green yarn and I've placed 2 strands on my needle so that I'm working with 2 strands. You don't have to do 2 strands if you want to just do 1, but you will see the X's a lot more predominantly if that is the style you're going for, but I just want a little bit more of a cleaner look. We're going to be referring to the graph for the whole of this cross stitch section, and as you can see where the stem starts right at the bottom is at row 5, and that is the 20th stitch across. So I'm just going to be counting that section. So as you can see here, I'm going right in this corner and I'm just going to kind of pull the work out so that you can see these holes. So right in this corner we've got this sort of hole, and that is the last stitch that I crocheted for that row, but it's technically for this sort of side it's going to be the first stitch. So we've got this hole right here, the one above it, and then the one across from it and the one down, and that is going to count as 1 square on the graph. So that is basically 1 stitch, if that makes sense. So this corner square of holes is going to be the first stitch of row 1. So now I'm going to count up to the 5th row. So this is 1, and when I count up I'm just counting up 2 holes right here, because we want all of the squares to be kind of touching each other. So we've got 1 square here, so I'm just going to go up 2 to get to my second row. This is still the first stitch of row 2. Go up a second square, another square again, and that is now the 3rd row, still stitch 1. Up and again, that's row 4, and up again 1 more, and that's row 5. So when we go up to the 5th row, we're just focusing on these bottom holes for the time being, because that's going to be where we start the work, if that makes sense. So using my needle, I'm now just going to count across in the bottom left hole, and then going across to the next bottom left hole of the next square, and next bottom left hole of the next square. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20. So now I have found where I'm going to be starting, and once you've found the area that you're starting, everything else becomes much easier, because you can then figure out where I need to go up 1 stitch from the 20th stitch, if that makes sense. So We are now going to start our first cross stitch. Now for this stem section, we're going to be doing something a little bit different compared to everything else because they are stacked on top of each other. So I'm just going to start the first cross stitch, and my first lot of cross stitches for the stem is just stacked on top of each other, so it's nice and simple. So I'm just going to start my first cross stitch in the 5th row, and that's stitch 20. So I'm going into from my bottom left stitch hole, and I'm going to pull through. I'm just going to leave a short tail at the back. I'm just holding it there with my finger so that once I complete my cross stitches it kind of tucks itself in. And now I'm going up to the top right hole of that square and pulling through like so. Just make sure that it's nice and even and flat. And now I'm going to go down to the bottom right hole and pull through like that, and finally going up to the top left hole to complete the cross. So that's pretty much the motion that you want to do for each of the cross stitches. Because the first lot that we're doing are stacked on top of each other, so that's going to be row 6, 7, 8 and 9, we're going to be kind of starting the next stitch in somewhere different, because if we start the next stitch right here in this bottom left hole of the one above and pull through, we just undo the previous stitch. So I'm just going to redo that. I'm going to show you how you can do your cross stitches stacked on top of each other without undoing that stitch. So instead of starting in the bottom left hole of the square above, we're actually going to be starting in the bottom right and going down to the bottom left. So we're just doing one kind of like diagonal line. We're starting up a little bit higher than where we started for the previous cross stitch. And then I'm just going to complete my like normal step, which is the bottom right hole up to the top left. So if you're stacking your stitches kind of in a vertical way, and your like previous cross stitch usually always ends in the top left, that means that you're going to have to do the kind of other method where you start in the top right and go down to the bottom left, otherwise you will undo that previous stitch. So I'm just going to repeat that again now for row 7, and that is still the 20th stitch of row 7. So I'm going up to the top right and going down to the bottom left, and then into the bottom right and up to the top left to complete the stitch. So it's nice and simple. Okay, and now I'm going to do the 8th row, still the 20th stitch, going up to the top right, back down to the bottom left, across to the bottom right, back up to the top left. So now I've done row 5, 6, 7 and 8, and I still need to do one more, which is row 9, so I'm just going to do that quickly now. So I've just done my kind of first lot of cross stitches, which was nice and simple. They were just stacked on top of each other. So now I'm going to start the next row, which is going to be row 10, the 19th and 20th stitch of row 10. So as you can see, because we're doing the 19th stitch, we're actually going to be starting right over here. Now this is kind of where you will probably be doing majority of these stitches now in the normal way, if that makes sense. So the normal way would just be kind of to just start your row from the bottom left up to the top right rather than going from the top right down, because we're not stacking these on top. We're starting our first stitch from the one to the left, so that's the 19th stitch. So I'm going down to the bottom left of the 19th stitch up to the top right like that, pull through. And now I'm going to complete like my 20th stitch in the same like flow of it, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to go back down to the bottom left of that 20th stitch of row 10, so right here, as you can see, where we ended the previous stitch, like that. Pull through and go back up to the top right, like that. So now we have what we call half cross stitches. So now we can complete the cross stitches by going in the opposite direction from bottom right to top left. And this is kind of like what I would call the normal way of doing it. It's just that the beginning of this stem, we had to stack a few on top of each other, which just meant that we have to kind of do the method where it doesn't undo each stitch. But from this point forward, it's pretty much the normal way of doing it. So from going from kind of left to right to left is quite a smooth way of doing your cross stitches, and it's typically the way that most tutorials will show you. So now I'm going to start row 11, and we've got 4 stitches, and as you can see we have an extra stitch kind of either side of these 2 that we just done, so it's kind of easier now to be able to count where you're going to start, but refer to the graph numbers if it helps you. So we did 19 and 20 of row 10, now we're doing row 11 and we're going to be doing 18, 19, 20 and 21. So I am now going to be starting my next row, and as you can see I don't need to stack my next stitch on top of this one, so now I can start in the bottom left of the 18th stitch. So I'm just going from bottom left to top right, pull through, now starting the 19th stitch, bottom left to top right, pull through, now starting the 20th, bottom left to top right, and now lastly the 21st stitch, bottom left to top right. Okay, now I'm just going to complete them by going in the opposite direction, now going from bottom right to top left for each stitch. So you'll always kind of be doing like 18, 19, 20, 21, and then 21, 20, 19, 18, if that makes sense. You'll be going kind of ascending and then descending on the way back. Okay, so that's pretty much the cross stitch method. Now for example, let's just say we're ignoring the next row, row 12, as what it is on the graph, and let's just say in row 12 we have a stitch that is sitting directly above the one that we just completed in the previous row. So what that would mean is we would not go into the bottom left because that would just undo the stitch. We would go into the top right, just like we did for these stacked stitches down here, and then go down to the bottom left, and then we would just continue, if there are stitches next to it, then going from bottom left to top right, bottom left to top right. It's just that first initial one, you have to do it in kind of reverse order so that you're not undoing that stitch. So an example of where you might have to do that is row 13 and then row 14. So you would just complete row 13 as normal, and then for row 14 you will see that there is a stitch on top of the first stitch of row 13, which by the way is the 15th stitch, and you would just do that method of basically doing the first stitch reverse, so right, top right to bottom left rather than bottom left to top right, because you don't want to undo that stitch. So I'm just going to continue now cross stitching, and obviously when you get to the red section you just change to your red colour and double strand it and do the exact same method. And I do want to just add that obviously I'm working kind of from the bottom to top, just to kind of make it a little bit easier for you, but if you do want to start at any point on the graph you can. There's no rules for it, you can start at any row. So I'm going to complete the rest of the cross stitch off camera, and then I'm going to show you how we kind of assemble the bag strap. Okay, so this is what the cross stitch designs look like once you've all finished, and then you just want to tuck in the ends all at the back of the work. And now I'm going to show you how to do the strap. So we're basically going to do the strap, the side and the base of the bag kind of all in one go. Okay, so with your bag strap colour you just want to make a slip knot, and then you just want to make a chain of the length you want the bag strap to be. Now for this design I want the bag strap to tie together, so you need to keep that in mind, that you need kind of an extra length of the bag strap that is able to tie together nicely. So I'm just going to kind of try out a length of a chain. So far I've done 60 chains, and I'm just going to kind of line this up with the top corner of the bag. So this is not going to count as the side seam or the base. This is simply just going to be the strap where it ties around. So from this point here in the corner going up, and I have to keep in mind that the strap will kind of shrink a little bit once I do the first row. So I think I'm going to probably double this. So I've got 60 stitches or 60 chains. I'm going to do another 60. Okay, so I've done an extra 50, so in total I've done 110. And now, once you have your bag strap length, you just want to make sure that it's not twisted, the chain, and then you just want to place it back on the hook. And I'm going to insert my hook into that top corner stitch, and I'm going to make a slip stitch with it. So I'm just going to insert my hook right here and make a slip stitch. So I'm going to yarn over anti-clockwise and pull through that stitch like that, and then I'm going to pull that first loop through the second like this. Okay, and now I'm just going to slip stitch into each stitch across the side here. So I'm just now going to be able to ignore this strap length that we've got, and I'm just going to insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then pull your first loop through the second. Again, into the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and pull through, and pull your first loop through the second. And this is going to give you a really nice seamless line going down the edge of the bag. And I'm going to do this all the way across the bottom. I'm going to do this all the way across the side of the bag and then across the bottom, and you haven't really got any proper stitches across the bottom. You just want to try your best and insert your hook kind of into each space. So I've got 40 rows, so I'm going to roughly do about 40 slip stitches across the bottom, and then I'm going to slip stitch up the other edge. Once I get to the other edge and I've done my final slip stitch in that corner, I'm then going to do another 110 chains. Okay, so I've just done all of my slip stitches, and then I've done another 110 chains, and now you just want to make sure that the second chain that you've done is not twisted. And then once you have untwisted the chain, you then just want to add you want to add an extra chain for the turning chain, so that's now 111, because now we're going to be crocheting down this chain. So what we're going to do is that we're going to be single crocheting into the back bumps all the way across the chain, and then once we get to our first slip stitch, we are going to be single crocheting into each slip stitch all the way across. So I'm just going to grab my chain, and then I'm just going to single crochet into the second back bump from the hook. So the back bump is going to be when I flip the chain over, and I'm going to insert my hook into that second back bump right there, and then single crochet as normal, like that. And I'm just going to single crochet down into each back bump all the way across, so in total that's 110 single crochets. Okay, so I've just done all of my single crochets down that chain, and now we've reached the bag section. So you want to flip your bag onto the wrong side, and you will then create a little twist in the work, but that's completely fine, it won't be visible at all. And just as a recap, if you are right-handed, you would have chained up on the right side, worked down, across and up, and then you would have started your single crochets on the left bag strap over here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to now single crochet into each slip stitch all the way around, and then I will repeat exactly what I did for the first step of this bag strap over here, where I'm going to single crochet into each back bump all the way across. So I'm just going to kind of basically be working in a really long row back and forth. This is going to technically be row 1 for the bag strap, and then I will meet you back for row 2. Okay, so I've just reached the end of the first row where I've done all of my single crochets, and I've just done my last single crochet to that last back bump, and now I'm going to start row 2. So for row 2 I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and we're now going to be working on the right side. So this is where the design is facing up, and we are going to be doing slip stitches in the back loop only, and I'm going to be starting my first slip stitch in the back loop into the second stitch because I want to end up with some decreases so that we get the effect of it looking like a ribbon where the edge is kind of diagonal. So I'm going to skip the first stitch and I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop of the next stitch, so just grabbing that back loop of the V and making a slip stitch. So yarn over and pull through that loop, and then pull the first loop through the second, just like we did before. And now I'm just going to continue doing my slip stitches all the way into each back loop. So I'm just going into each stitch, doing slip stitches, and I'm going to go all the way across the chain, across the strap, sorry, all the way down the side of the bag, across the bottom and back up, and then all the way across the other side of the strap. And what I'm going to do in that final kind of section is I'm going to skip the second to last stitch, and I'm going to go into the very last stitch with a slip stitch in the back loop. So at the beginning you'll be skipping the first stitch, and then at the end of the row you'll be skipping the second to last stitch. So I'm just going to continue now slip stitching in the back loop all the way across the row, and don't forget to do your decrease at the end. So that's skipping that second to last stitch and then doing a slip stitch in the back loop of the final stitch. Okay, so I've just completed my second row and now I'm going to do my third row. So again, I'm going to chain 1 and turn the work, and I'm going to skip the first stitch, and from this point forward we are continuously working in the back loop. Now on the wrong side it's technically the front loop, and on the right side it will be the back loop, but it's basically the same loop. So I'm going to skip the first stitch and I'm going to insert my hook into the front loop of the next stitch, and for the wrong side I'm doing single crochets. So right side is going to be slip stitches and wrong side is going to be single crochets. So skip the first stitch and then insert your hook into the next front loop and make your single crochet, and then just continue to make single crochets into each front loop all the way down the entire row. And then once you get to the end of the row you're going to chain 1 and turn the work, and you're going to make your slip stitches in the back loop, and you're going to alternate between row 2 and row 3 until you are happy with the thickness of the strap and the base as well. So just continue that and you should get a really nice kind of braided looking stitch like this. And once you have done the amount of rows that you want, you can just chain 1 and fasten off, and then I will show you how we attach it to the back panel. Okay, so to attach everything together I'm basically going to be flipping everything on the inside out with my cream panel on top, and then grabbing that red yarn and cutting a long string of it, and I'm going to be weaving the yarn in between the red inside loop of the bag strap and the cream inside loop of the back panel, and I'm kind of doing this sort of spiral type motion between the two, and this is going to attach everything nice and neatly. And then after a few times of doing that I just kind of pull on thread to keep it hidden, and then that is all complete. And this is what the final result is looking like. I hope you all loved this tutorial. I really loved making it for you, and I'd love to see the final result of your shoulder bags. Let me know if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see me make next, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.